Helena is way more fascinating than Helly, and she is way better for this show.
Despite being the best show on television, Severance is giving signs that it could be jumping the shark.
No. My name is Catfish, and this is Double P Podcast presenting Milchick Men, a podcast about AppleTV Plus's show Severance. This is season 2, and with me, as always, is someone who's taught me all the rhyming jokes I know. It's Bubba!
Catfish, it's so sad to be joined by somebody who doesn't deserve a marshmallow. I'm so excited / thrilled / scared to be talking season 2, episode 4, Woes Hollow with You. The team participates in a group activity.
Hell yes.
Catfish, we have some of our loyal listeners have already sent us ratings, or do you want to tell everybody what you thought of the episode? What do you want to go to first?
All right, let me do mine first. And first, before I say this, I want to preface this. Poor Bubba. He wanted things sped up last week, even though Mark was already doing a reintegration. He's like, we're taking a slow path to the wizard, and now we get this episode. Bubba, as I watched this episode, I was like, Bubba gonna mark this episode way low. But I obviously had to give it the double T scale.
Double T?
Yeah, that's a thruple tease. We had a little bit of a thruple tease tonight with Mark, Helena, and Mark's Audi wife. Bubba?
Yeah.
We have been podcasting for 10 years? 11 years. And I'm going to do something that I haven't done in 11 years of podcasting. Even though I'm really silly and I say stupid stuff, I have always taken the ratings seriously. And the ratings can be anywhere from 0 to 10. Bubba, yeah. I am giving tonight's episode 10.5 thruple teases out of 10. This is amazing. I love this episode. First, we had Milchick's marvelous costume, Milchick's marvelous storytelling, Milchick's tossing of the Kier marshmallows. We had Irv's fever dream. Helena, yes, Helena and Mark hooking up. Irv, Audi Helena. And Bubba, we suspected, we were like 95% sure this was Helena. So the reveal that she was Helena wasn't a surprise, but the way that it went down was fantastic. John Turturro, great actor, finally let off the leash. He was phenomenal. This episode is his Emmy submission, and Bubba, I am going to vote for him for Best Supporting Actor if I get that chance. I'll definitely get the chance in the first round because they put like 100 people in, and then the top 5 get into the second round. Bubba, this was amazing. But most importantly for this rating, on an earlier podcast, you said in the behind the scenes thing that the producer says Helena thought the Innies were subhuman. And I was very skeptical of that. I'm like, she doesn't seem like she's subhuman. She seemed interested on what happened between Helly and Mark. So what really made this episode go above 10 for me was that this episode proved that I was right. And that unlike the producers, Bubba, we here on the Milchick Men Podcast will never lie to you, our loyal listeners. We will not deceive you, Bubba, for the production design, for the acting, for all the things that happened in this episode. Bubba, for the first time ever, I am going above a 10.5 out of 10 thruple teases for tonight's episode.
Wow, Catfish.
Mm-hmm.
You don't understand what the top being 10. These go to 11. Way to go, Catfish. You've proven it. Whoa. So that implies, your impassioned speech tells me thought it was okay. What did our listeners think?
All right, Bubba. Well, here's somebody. Look, I dared to go above 10. Gen X Cat Mom says, hold my beer. Gen X Cat Mom went 12 out of 10 quad W's.
Quad W.
Yeah, that is Woe's Winter Wonderland, WTF.
What?
Gen X Cat Mom agreed. Cinematography just incredible. The last 10 minutes not on anyone's bingo card. Innovative, unsettling, and outstanding. Blue balloons, babies and opening credits, tonight's theme and events. I predict Mark's going to have twin boys. Whoa.
Whoa. 12
Now-
out of 10. That's incredible.
Now, Sayali at
Yeah.
Yapali at Blue Sky says, wow, I have so many questions.
That's not a rating. Interesting.
Bubba Link Hogthrob says, copious luxury meats. Ha ha ha. In the immortal words of Miss Wong, this episode was pretty cool, right? Marshmallows are for closers or team players. And we have one more. Wayne Rogers says, wow, intense. Definitely 9.5. Irving B. What a badass. So these are the real reviews, Bubba. I gave mine. We got 12. We got a 9.5. We got so much love. And we always say, we only care what you think, not what we think. So let's skip over what Bubba thinks about this episode. Oh, no, wait. All right, Bubba. The pressure is on. First, just again, I want to reiterate, as I was watching this episode, that was just an amazing episode of television, I thought to myself, Bubba going to hate this episode so bad. So, Bubba, tell me, am I right? What is your rating? Last week was pretty low, 7. You gave it a gentleman's 7. What is your rating for tonight's episode? Season 2, episode 4, Woe's Hollow.
Catfish. Just to get the record straight,
Mm-hmm.
the lowest rating anybody gave it was our listener, Wayne Rogers, who gave it a 9.5 out of 10.
That's correct.
The lowest anybody so far has given it.
Yep.
And Catfish, last week,
Yeah.
what did I say about Severance? I went down to 7 because I like to laugh in an episode of Severance and you know, kind of have a lot of jokes and merriment in all the misery that also comes with the show. Do you find this episode especially funny? Did you laugh a lot in it?
The humor I found in it where it was not belly laughs, there was a lot of amusement at the words of Keir delivered by Milchick and also delivered by others, Bubba. I agree this wasn't a funny episode, but it was an amazing episode, and I will forgive the humor for the grand scope and complexity of this episode. Once again, Bubba, you're hiding. Let's hear your rating so everyone can excoriate you for it.
Well, for season 2, episode 4, Woe's Hollow, I'm going to give it 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Quadruple M's.
Quadruple M's.
Marvelous Milchick's Marshmallow Manners. This episode was great. Oh my God, it was great. It was edge of your seat, wonderful. Now, in our debate section, if you're new to the podcast, we always have these debate sections that we tease right at the very beginning of the podcast. Of course, we get to those debates right at the very end. And I will mention some signs that I do think the show might jump the shark for me. But for this episode as a whole, 10 out of 10. Man, this is the best show on television. I think I said it in episode 1. I'm saying it again. Catfish has yet to say it because he's, giving these
This is the best
ratings.
This is the best show on television.
Okay. This show was wonderful. If you do watch those after the episode, little promos that
they lie.
So, well, they do say this one thing. They say that this place where they filmed, this beautiful scenery that they filmed in, I'm going to mispronounce it, all my Yankees, all my New Yorkers. No, I'm going to mispronounce it. It's called Minnewaska State Park Preserve, which is about 90 minutes north of New York City in Manhattan. It is beautiful. And in the after show, they explain that because this is a natural park and they're not allowed to destroy anything, they almost had to build bridges to get to where they were going to film so they wouldn't touch anything and hurt anything. Bridges from like parking lots into the park so they could see this stuff. Incredible, wonderful, brilliant, beautiful, engaging. You sit up in your seat, you cover your eyes. Irving Irv is almost as wonderful as Milchick. And when I see these two forces butting heads rather than leading us to a brighter tomorrow, it's sad, it's tragic. Catfish, let's go ahead and have some double S.
Double S?
Severance Speculation. Is this the last we see of Innie Irv in season 2?
No, I believe we have already been set up for some Audi Irv. So we may not see Innie Irv, but we're definitely going to see Audi Irv.
Right. Well, my question was, are we going to see Innie Irv for the rest of this season?
Oof. I don't know. I would give that 30-70, 30% chance yes, 70% chance no. I mean, what he has done is going to royal everything. And the way he did it, Bubba, was just, I think you could wonder a little bit why his suspicions could have maybe grown a little bit more before he got to this point. I could see Helly kind of striking back. We could talk about that later, but
so
this
good.
was
Now, before we go any further, we do need to issue a correction for last podcast we did.
Mm-hmm.
We were wondering, why isn't Dylan talking about the Family Visitation Center? And sure enough, we had feedback from Ian O'Connor, Renee, and Susan, who all said, yeah, remember in episode 1, Milchick specifically told Dylan, you can't tell anybody else about the new room. So we forgot that, mainly because we were so excited for episode 4. If you want to reach out and tell us how you thought of an episode before our podcast is even out, you can do it on social media. All our social media handles are at PHQ. That's on Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, Twitter, Facebook.com/PHQ. When you watch an episode and you're as passionate about it as we are, reach out on social media and let us know. If you're on YouTube, go down there in those comments and tell us we're wrong. When we do these big debates, like Catfish's Helena over Helly, my big, hey, are we about to jump the shark? It's important that we hear from you. This is 3 friends talking about a great show. You're the 3rd friend. Go down there and let us know. Also,
Bubba,
if you're on audio podcast,
Yeah,
we haven't been pushing this in years, kind of because we push people so much in our early audio podcast days. But reviews on sites like Spotify and Apple Podcast are always helpful. We have a new review from a user on Apple Podcast by the name of Al Shalant, who said, I'm so glad I found your guys' Severance podcast. I loved your Joffrey podcast show on Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. Ooh, thank you so much. Always be sure to tell your friends that you listen to 2 silly people talk about great TV.
Exactly, Bubba. And if you are on YouTube, remember, it's just 3 friends sitting around talking. But you know what would be better than 3 friends sitting around talking? 374 friends sitting around talking. We need 370 more subs to get to 10,000. Help us get to 10K. Ooh, Bubba. When we get to 10K, we're like influencers.
Hey, speaking of influence, Catfish, is the show influencing us? In season 2, episode 1, there's that fun little claymation recap of season 1 of Severance that the Innie see how their overtime escapades influenced Lumon, and Lumon showed them this video to talk about, hey, we're making changes. In that claymation in episode 1, they had the infamous bobbing for pineapples.
They did.
And which character was bobbing for pineapples in the claymation? It was Helly. There's even a shot of Helly claymation Helly underwater with her eyes wide. Now, in that, she's bobbing for pineapples, but is that being influenced, Catfish, by the future? Or in episode 1, when Milchick said, oh, Mark, it's been 5 months. Are we seeing some timey-wimey stuff where maybe this Helena being dunked by Irving is being influenced and showing up in the claymation? What is going on, Catfish? Why I think
it's just a nice little tease, and perhaps we should be looking at not only that video, but we should be looking at the new show credits, which did a lot of showing Mark flash back between his Innie and Audi, which we started to see tonight.
One other thing people are talking about from episode 3 that we didn't catch is that if you looked at Helly's driver, we talked about that sweet Cadillac that Helly was riding in, and she was confronted by Miss Cobell, and her driver, if you look at him, he looks identical to one of the wax figures of the Eagans from season 1. And people said, oh boy, this guy looks just like Baird Eagan, one of the wax statues. We'll post that on our social media. There is some craziness, Catfish, happening in the show, in our world. Speaking of our world, we always do this every week. What would you like to have severed from your gray cells?
Bubba, you go first. I had one, but I completely forgot. It got severed from my mind.
We like to have silly talk on this podcast. This week, because of some unforced errors, we had our friends, the Canadians, booing the United States, the American anthem at hockey games. And as somebody put it on social media, how stupid and evil do you have to have Canadians booing you? So in honor of your hat and all our friends to the Great White North, we apologize for America. And I'd like to have this terrible, terrible stuff that America does severed from my little gray cells. How about you, Catfish? Do you have a severed thing you'd like removed from your brain after episode 4?
I'd like to have severed from my brain that section up top where you said this show is about to jump the shark, because I've heard you say a lot of things in your time, but nothing quite so hilarious.
Catfish, look at the timestamps below and jump to the section where we debate on it, because I'm going to make a prediction right now. Everybody mark this timestamp, that there's going to be part of Catfish that may be agreeing with me after we finish our debates. Mm-hmm.
Unlikely. Okay, Bubba, this is one. Even though you gave it 10 out of 10, you accepted the fact that this show was not as funny as they have been in
this
the past.
episode. No.
Okay, here were two things that made me chuckle that was very dry humor. Okay. First was the best description of onanism ever, where Keir says, "I had no choice but to listen as he spilt his lineage upon the soil." And what I also enjoyed was later on they talked about that, they laughed about that. That was good. They need some humor. We had some real humor between the innies. They're not usually laughing. They're in dire straits. Now, my other humorous moment was when Milchick was reading the horrible things that happened to Keir's brother Dieter. And he said, after he finishes his horrible tale, he's like, "All right, well, maybe tomorrow we'll read the next chapter, Keir and the Thieving Nanny."
Catfish, the 4th appendix is never wrong. And if you're here,
it's huge. It is. The 4th appendix this is not an appendix, Bubba. This is a damn Bible.
Do we want to get into the Mormonism of it all? If you know our Latter-day Saints history, didn't that start in upstate New York where the golden plates were found? I wonder what this show is trying to say. But also, Keir and the Thieving Nanny. What would you love to do with a thieving nanny? Well, you'd love to sever her so that her outside self, her non-working self, would be tempted to thieving. That's what I say. Well,
what's funny is I found that story funny in two ways. One, it's very classicist that he's going to knock a thieving nanny. Number two, it's like, all right, we just finished Band of Brothers. Now we're going to watch a cartoon. I mean, this was a heavy duty thing. You think they might save that for last, but the Thieving Nanny is a palate cleanser, Bubba.
Let me ask you this, Catfish. Mm-hmm. When poor Dieter spilled his lineage upon the soil, do you think he really needed not 2-ply but 4-ply tissue to clean up after himself? I mean, that's shameful. Shameful.
Bubba, now you remind me, that was one thing that I was going to have severed from my mind, that they've got 4-ply tissue. Damn it. That sounds so luxurious.
How many plies is too many plies? None too many. None too many plies.
None too many. All right, Bubba, let's get into this episode, which we ranked as high as possible for you and higher than possible for me.
Irving wakes up, and little did we know at the beginning of the episode, but maybe it should have told us. Maybe that beginning of the episode should have told us that this episode really was a spotlight on Irving. He wakes up, and in some ways he wakes up in a white void, Catfish. It's later on, in just seconds later, that you suddenly realize he's what appears to be on a frozen lake. And there is Mark, and you're like, why did Lumon take them out to this reserve?
Well,
how did they put them in different places, Catfish?
First of all, what's cool about starting the episode is, for me, it took me, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 minutes to feel like, okay, this is actually real. They're actually in a real place and not some place kind of in their minds to test them. Because
you're getting to it, Catfish. That's
because
right.
It was so pristine and amazing. It doesn't even feel like a real space. It was
the tallest waterfall
ethereal
on the planet, Catfish.
It is ethereal, Bubba.
Incredible. Mark, rather than going down to Irv, he's like, "Hey, Irv, come up the steep cliff to me." Helly appears out of nowhere.
Well, hold on. And Irv wants him to come down, but then Irv says, "This is on ice." And I want Mark to say, "Yeah, that's why I want you to come up. I'm not coming down onto the ice with you."
Come on. If you take a lot of this at face value, this is their first time ever seeing the sky, right?
Yes.
Dylan saying, "I knew there was no actual ceiling, but this is effing insane." I mean, this is monumental to them, and something bigger than suddenly being able to see the sky and actually touch the earth is they get a personal message from Milchick.
Yeah, that is great. They've rolled the TV and the DVD player out there. We have Milchick saying, "Good morning, refiners. This is Mr. Milchick from work, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to your first ORTBO, of course, which stands for Outdoor Retreat and Team Building Occurrence." I love, they always use strange words. It's not an exercise, it's an occurrence. They are in the Dieter Eagan National Forest. And what this trip
they
is
had never
for,
heard of it. Did you notice they had never heard of that?
Again, remember, they are innies. Now, you're right. There's a lot of like innie past history about stuff they've done, and you would presume that the Dieter Eagan National Forest might be in some sort of painting, but it turns out that this is sort of a surprise place because most people don't know about the fourth appendix. So this is more like Scientology, where you when you get to the upper levels, then you find out the real truth about Xenu. And he says,
Catfish, you're letting everybody know who isn't in the upper levels.
Oh, sorry.
I'm not in the upper levels, and you
send me your money. I think you only have to spend like $50,000 to get that info. Just send me maybe $1,000.
Catfish, I didn't even have to go to Scissor Cave. You just came out and told me.
Right. So first Scissor Cave. Okay. So Milchick says Keir dictated a fourth appendix in his final hours of life. Those must have been long final hours, Bubba, because this is a big appendix. A text of sex sanctity that is forbidden upon the severed floor. It's waiting for you in Scissor Cave, the very same grotto where Keir Eagan tamed the four tempers for the very first time. And Bubba, I'm going to talk about this later, but the four tempers they luckily reminded us at the previously on that the four tempers were talked about, and they were woe, frolic, dread, and malice. And so we'll talk about that later when I get to the catfish questions. But the real thing here that's creepy to me is, Bubba, not only have they never seen the sky before, but think about it. They have never slept before. They've never fallen asleep. They've never had dreams. They've never woken up. And you have to wonder, how did they get their outies to agree to this? This is unprecedented, at least publicly. I mean, we think we know that there are some innies who have no outie lives, but now you're convincing an outie 2 days in there. So this is all new to them. Out of the office, in the world, more than a day, sleeping, waking. You know, the first time ever I drove in snow, I was like 24 years old, and I'd lived in Hawaii before that. I got off an exit and I went to brake, and luckily there was no one there because I braked about 100 yards. I finally stopped about 100 yards from where I meant to. So, Bubba, it's almost amazing that they're not more freaked out by what's going on here.
Catfish, I don't want to step on a catfish question.
Yep.
But when you're talking about the four tempers, we've got four characters. Is there one that you would say is frolic? Is there one that you would say is woe? Like, are these four characters we're focused on, are they in some ways human representations of the four tempers?
My question later on, we might as well talk about it now, is we've already seen somebody who is technically frolic. That's what the guy
Mr.
from
Drummond.
had tattooed on his hand, and I was like, I don't know what that means. That is a fascinating question, because what I was thinking was who outside would represent that, but that is a great question. All right, so let's do it.
I want to
is
go
like
one,
FMK.
I
Do it, Bubba.
I want to go over one more. In the infamous painting, which we saw at the beginning of season 2, episode 1, they come downstairs and there's this painting called Kier Pardons His Betrayers. There are 4 people buried up to their neck, and I'm wondering if those are the 4 tempers as well. So,
Okay, so Bubba, let's do it. FMK, let's do it. Who is?
It's FMWD. So we've got Frolic, Malice, Woe, and Dread. So Frolic, is that Dylan? Is Dylan kind of the frolicker of the 4, you would say?
It's hard to match them up here. Let's start from the beginning. Okay, if we're going to take out Helly and put in Helena, we would have to call her Malice.
I like that. Okay, sure.
And Mark, we would have to call
Woe, because he's mourning. Sure, okay.
Right. Yeah, okay, we're going to have to make Irv
Dread.
So then we're stuck if we're going to do this.
Well, Frolic is Dylan. That's what I said.
No, that's what I mean. But we're stuck. But I don't feel like he's a frolicker.
Okay. All right, listeners, you tell us which of these 4 represents the 4 tempers. Oh my God, so good. The Innies begin to see not only the outside world, which they've never seen before, but it's like they're beginning to see things that you wonder, are they really there? Or these images placed in their minds, when suddenly you see Mark in his suit in the distance, or at least a Mark like avatar in the distance. Was that physically there, or is that placed in their mind?
No, I don't think this was placed in their mind. I think I had to come to the point where this is real and everything in it was real. Otherwise, I don't think Irv could have done what he did.
Okay.
In other words, if they were controlling it that much. But listen, our loyal listener, Wayne Rogers, says that he thinks MDR doubles are probably animatronic. We only see them move their arms. Irv's double is the only one not shown being helpful along the way, which is interesting. Now, Bubba, this was one of my catfish questions later, but it wasn't deeply dumb, so I'll ask it now because I have still plenty of deeply dumb questions.
Let's hear it.
There were several cases in which they could have run after and investigated the doubles, but they never did. That would have been my very first thing, to go and see what they were, what the deal is. I think the last one they saw, so it was Mark, and then Helly was second, right?
Right, and then Dylan was getting them to the hollow.
So I think Dylan's seemed like it was the closest. They could have run after Dylan's one.
And at least on my TV, Dylan's looked fake. Like when you really were closer to Dylan, and so you're like, okay, that's not Dylan. And so it could be one of those wax figures or an animatronic, like Wayne Rogers was saying. Incredible. What was your emotions? Did you still think it was a dream at this point, or had you flipped the switch and said, okay, this is really happening?
No, it took me a while to figure out that it was really happening. I still thought this was some sort of test.
Do you want to give it up to Irv for expanding our vocabulary every week? When Irv said about Milchick's monitor message, he said, I wouldn't trust a word out of that mountebank's mouth, not even televisually. Oh my God. That is some good stuff there. There's
some stuff going on with Irv that we haven't seen.
Without Irv, 100%.
Well, but with Innie Irv too, because he has really gotten way more suspicious and distrustful than we have seen in the first 3 episodes, for sure.
Good. That's the way people should be.
But not against Mr. Milchick. He's reliable.
Finally, you've come back to the straight path. You always go off the path and then you come back. Don't stray off Kier's path there, Catfish. As they're traveling through the forest, this could just be a visual thing they're doing, but they always keep the sun kind of in the same place. Did you notice that? It's almost like the clouds moved, but the sun was like, okay, I'm going to stay here. The Helly figure points them to Scissor Cave. They enter the cave. The 4th appendix, not only is it huge, it's dedicated to Dieter. Kier had a twin brother. They ran away to Woe's Hollow. And that's where Dieter kind of got freaky. He loved nature so much he got freaky with it, Catfish.
Some people don't appreciate nature, and some people overappreciate it.
Irving, on this walk, you can see Dylan's kind of getting winded. He's the only one that's like huffing and puffing for a little bit. Irving, he is watching Mark and Helena closely. He does not trust her, Catfish. And he even tells Mark he doesn't trust her. The infamous night gardener is a bridge too far for him. Now, what did this frozen thing they found out in the woods, Catfish, that Irving wants to eat, for goodness sakes?
Well, I did thought that it looked like a seal too, but then when I saw, the funny thing is usually when you see something closer, it's easier to identify. It was less easy to identify when I saw it closer.
I thought it was a frozen sloth at first. It was like, what is this thing? And why does Irving yell, "We should eat it"? This is going on. That was the first moment to me. Like it had been a fun dream when he is so passionate and filled with anger saying we should eat it. Oh, snap. Who said I had a bad experience? Irving knows what's up.
I mean, well, just think about it. This is part of the thing, right? I mean, they've always just been able to go to the snack room and get food. I mean, I don't think Irving would even know how to cook it. They wouldn't know how to do anything.
No, but they get to what is obviously a beautiful, tallest waterfall on the planet. Incredible. They see four versions of themselves at the top of the waterfall, like signifying, hey, you've made it to the pinnacle. And then they see something even more inspiring. Milchick in his winter threads.
Holy cow.
This is gorgeous. Last week we're saying maybe they drive all these old cars because Lumon doesn't pay well. To rock these threads, Lumon is paying Milchick very well. Oh,
hell yes.
incredible.
If I was that actor, I would be like, just let me buy these clothes because I love outstanding in them.
He brought Miss Wong. Like you're like, how did their Audis allow their Innies to do this? Well, how about this? How did Miss Wong's parents allow her to go out for a night out of work, an overnight work vacation? Whoa, man!
I mean, it depends. If Miss Wong is actually Mark's daughter and just has been an Innie the whole time,
here we go.
Then she doesn't have an Audi. All right, and then Milchick's so good because Irving's like, I'm hungry, and Milchick says, I was hoping that this waterfall would satiate you. And they all give him a thing, and then he says, straight face, like Milchick says, I'm teasing, of course. Yeah, sure, because he's a big jokester, that Milchick. He says, Lumon will always protect and provide.
Why does America hate Jimmy Fallon, late night comedian? Because he always his face always reveals it's a joke. Milchick, he never reveals it's a joke until he tells you it's a joke, and then you can laugh. This guy is a true hero.
It is so good. They got the MDR blue tents up. Those tents look badass. Here's another reason why this looks like this is set in the future. We've got somebody as in the past and in the future. These tents are awesome. They're heated inside. The outhouse has the 4-ply bath tissue. And
this is perfect. This is perfect. But what's not perfect is Helena knows Irving's on to her, and she is trying desperately to fix this. She brings him a snow seal, and it's like, oh, I thought you might be hungry. What did you see in the overtime contingency? Irv is hardcore. If you're gonna go out, man, go out like Irving. This chef's kid.
I mean, that's what I'm saying too, is like he is really pushing here, suspicious of everybody. Before he met Bert, he was just like a workaday dude, and now he's like, I need some answers. Whenever you have a campfire, you want to sit around, you want to tell stories, you want to sing. What's the best musical accompaniment? A theremin.
And that Miss Wong plays it.
She's
this
so good.
This supervisor, it's like she's gunning for Milchick's job. Don't let it happen, Milchick. You've trained her too well. Don't let her replace you.
All right, so we met many, many years ago in an improv group. And one of the games in the improv group is telling a story as a group. So you sit in a circle, somebody says one sentence, or they keep going on until the person leading the game says stop, and then the next person picks up. And in some way you try to keep it same, but it really usually ends up going in crazy places, Bubba. But none of those stories I ever heard in that game was as strange and weird as the story that Milchick says, because we've got Kier and Dieter having fun in the wild.
What's the big deal?
Kier wants to go home. Dieter doesn't. Dieter wants to live there.
Well,
so as a result of that, okay, all right, stop. Now the next person picks up the story. Okay, so obviously Dieter's eye pops out. His hair becomes moss.
He's leaking not pus so much, but sap. It's great. It's wonderful.
Yeah. And then Kier turns from his dying brother and walked to the pool of the hollow, where I knew the waterfall would drown out my brother's cries. And then Dylan, of course, has to chime in. That's actually really smart.
I mean, that is pretty smart. Like, many people are like, boy, I would love to tune out this podcast. What could I do? Oh, I could go get in the pool of the hollow. Man. And that's that's where in this beautiful setting, isn't that true of all folk tales, is in this beautiful setting of perfection, what's there? An imperfection. That's where Kier first encountered woe. A gaunt bride, half the height of a natural woman.
And you know what? What's also, when you're reading bedtime stories, sometimes it helps to have visual accompaniments.
Right,
so
a picture
we've
book.
got a picture of Kier as a little kid, and woe as a half his height ghoul bride.
Right, we need the ding, turn the page.
Now, woe blames Dieter's suffering on Kier. This is all you're doing. You suffered his wantonness. I guess apparently it's wrong to spill your seed out in nature. And
Kier didn't stop his brother, right?
I wouldn't interfere between anyone pleasuring themselves. If anything, the time when I would run to the waterfall so I wouldn't hear anything is not when someone's dying, but when they are pleasuring themselves.
Well, okay, hold on.
Yeah.
When they talk about his eye popping out, don't they mean his brown?
Oh, man. All right, so here's the end of the story.
Oh, yeah, let's get to it.
You suffered his wantonness. Now he's no one's brother. Yep. Only chaos's whore. The end. All right, let's go on to Kier and the Thieving Nanny.
Well, what you're so glad is it wasn't a giant cliffhanger. You know, this wasn't like, oh, I got to wait to read the next chapter. It ends. You know, he was chaos's whore.
And this is where we have this moment, and it's funny, it didn't hit me until I started talking about it. I think this is a real time we first had any of the Innies laughing together. Helly starts laughing about
Helena. Now, this is
Helena,
is she
Helena.
laughing? Is she laughing because she's like, oh my God, can you believe what my family does? Or is because she thinks that's how Helly would react?
I feels like she's truly laughing because I think Helly would try to hide it in. I think she's laughing slightly different than your first reason, when she's like, you believe that certain things in books are either apocryphal or they're teaching a lesson and it didn't really happen. So I think as a Kier, she's like, this is ridiculous. Someone wouldn't die just because they jerked off in the forest. So I think that's what she's doing. And then they all start joining in. But guess who doesn't like it is Triple M.
Triple M.
Yeah, mopey Mr. Milchick. No jokes allowed regarding the fourth appendix.
Think of what kind of HR you could get in trouble if you started making fun of somebody's religion. That's terrible. He stopped it.
I think you'd get more in trouble for reading a book about people jerking off.
No. No, you wouldn't. Well, look what happened to the person who was self-pleasuring. Sure. They died. Great point. In the workplace, you don't do that normally.
Good lesson. So then, of course, Mr. Milchick tells Miss Wong to throw the marshmallows in the fire. Now, speaking of sacrilege, Bubba, a lot of people misuse the American flag. You know, they're like, oh, don't disrespect the flag. And then they wear like flag shorts, flag shirts, whatever. You're not supposed to. That's actually desecrating the flag. So is it desecrating the marshmallows to just throw them in the fire, and if the marshmallows with Kier's face on, to throw them in the fire as opposed to them being used as a celebration? In other words, is Mr. Milchick going to get dinged for throwing the marshmallows in the fire?
Better that they burn than be used for sinners, right?
Oh my God!
And this
and they're only for team players. They don't just hand them out. That's what he says.
He's
but
right.
Now Irving, this is it. Irving, he's pushed it now.
Oh man.
He starts pushing Helena and Mark and Mark's relationship, which is weird. So this is where things go a little weird, because then he puts the pressure on about the night gardener.
Of course. Keep it up.
And then he comes hard. I don't know why he would expect people not to come hard, because he says about Mark using your pupils to make love to Helena while your Audi's wife rots away somewhere. Whoa. And then Helena says, he's upset.
Have you ever used your pupils to make love to somebody?
Yes, that's why I've got so many mirrors around the house.
We are definitely editing that out. We've just disturbed many listeners.
I touch myself when I think of myself.
Okay. That was
right.
so cold. That was so wonderful. 10 out of 10 episode. Why? That rocked me. That was like, Irving has come to play. Now,
Wow.
Helena is trying to, once again, she's trying to make this right, but she can't, because she doesn't really know Helly. She doesn't know how Helly would really react.
But this is amazing, because first of all, Mark, he can make Google eyes at anyone, and she apologizes to him, and she says that was mean. So to me, I'm thinking there's still that remaining 10%. Is this Helly? Is this Helly because she's apologizing?
No.
And then she says to Mark, I'm not happy with who I was out there. And to be honest, I did not think that Helena would be that open about her feelings unless she is being very, very, very sneaky here, because it feels like she's bearing her soul. So I thought, I don't know, they're doing a great job of making me think that this still could be Helly. And then she's like, I'm sorry, I don't want to detract from your wife. And he's like, what wife? Boom, bomb, chicka, bow, bow.
What wife? Whoa.
And then he's reminded what wife, because while things are happening, he starts to see flashes between his wife and Helena. Wow. And then we have
adult content, Catfish. Helena knows.
Not adult enough.
Helena is aware. You're talking about HR of a company. You're talking about telling a story about Dieter spoiling the soil. This is her getting busy with an employee. This is a lawsuit waiting to happen. This is why we need Mrs. Cobell back.
So
a supervisor fooling around with an employee, that's wrong.
To me, this answers, and again, this isn't a dumb question, so it goes here rather than later.
All right.
What we still don't know is what Helena's true aim here. Is she doing this for the company, really, as a mole, as Irvin says later on? Or is she doing this because she has something missing in her life and sees this relationship with Mark? To me, I don't know if you have a clear answer to that, but to me, that's still completely up in the air.
Is it possible this entire Ortbo is happening because she wants to get her freak on, because she's thirsty, Catfish?
I mean, now granted, she's only got 3 options.
Only 3.
Well, no. I mean, she's in her group. There's only 3 options for her to get busy, and I
Milchick looking fresh like that.
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, she could get busy with Milchick, but of the three options that she has in her direct group, I still think Irving is a better shot than Mark, because again, His hair is so badly dyed.
Boy, that's a callback to several podcasts ago. Okay, let's
Yeah,
get
I know,
to it.
but now that you've mentioned it, this is your fault, Bubba. I wasn't really it wasn't bothering me, but now that you've mentioned it, that's all I can see. I blame you. Oh my God. And then here we go.
Here we go.
This is what I talked about. It didn't fully happen, but it feels like the thruple tease. And what I like is when Milchick still first said this at the beginning of the season, we're like, that is ridiculous. And yet it's happening, Bubba. There's a thruple happening.
Well, let's get to some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
If there's a pregnancy from this tent sex, who's the mother? Helly or Helena? Or Gemma?
Helena.
Who's the father? Innie Mark or Outie Mark?
Oh, Innie Mark.
How is this not cheating? How is Helly going to react when she finds out Mark fooled around and couldn't even tell it wasn't her?
Well, she's going to be upset just the same way that Outie Dylan G is going to be upset if he finds out that his wife gets busy with Innie Dylan G.
This is it. Yeah. I mean, this is not.
All right.
Good.
Now, we've got a couple comments that we have to read here. Link Hogthrob says, both hot.
Meaning Helena and Helly.
Yeah, he said he prefers Helena's hair better. Did Mark deliver lineage to Helena, or was it spilled on the forest floor? Oh,
that is terrible.
That means, did Mark pull Outie? And that reminds me of a joke another listener said. I'm a rebel. Dottie says Mark was definitely in Innie that night. Hey-o.
Hey-o. Terrible.
All right, so Bubba, let's go to Irving because Irving has.
Well, real quickly, everybody knows that a couple episodes ago I was talking about the beautiful shot compositions and how you were like, no one cares about grip work. Well, how about director Ben Stiller having the hot, steamy tent sex pretty much with a red wash from the heater? You see that electric heater in the tent.
Yeah, no,
that is flooding the tent with a red light. Where Irving, where he goes out into the woods, has to escape this viciousness, this evilness. He is under a cool blue light of the moon. And so you have the red and the blue cutting back and forth. And they're getting busy while Irving is calling out, Mr. Milchick, Miss Wong.
Yeah, if you're asking me if I prefer the lovemaking scene with Helena to be better lit, the answer is yes.
Terrible.
All right, so let's go on Irving's little dream adventure here, because this seems really strange. Something is happening.
He survived the night, but he sleeps outside. He wakes up in a dream. He's in his office suit, his Lumon suit, Catfish. He's dressed for work.
Oh, my God. And then pulling down the screen across from him, or his screen. Oh, my God. It is his boy. And the look on Bert's face. Whoa. Speaking of Helly and Mark's night together, Bert's look was pregnant with meaning.
Oh, my goodness. Whoa is the bride. She's in her wedding dress and, half a human. And guess what? Even she has to go to work. No wonder she's well. She's at the keyboard typing, Catfish. Oh, God, if you had coworkers like that, it'd be great because they could do some work and then it wouldn't be all you. This is so good.
I mean, holy cow. And then the numbers are just all scrambled. And then they appear to become letters.
Some of them did. That's true. And it even, if you look at it, some people are saying it almost looks like Helena's face underwater is being formed out of the letters and numbers.
Oh, my God. That is so good.
So holy cow. This last bit of feedback we do have to get to from Wayne Rogers, where he noted that Irving falling asleep with his head on a rock reminds him of the biblical story of Jacob's ladder, and Jacob has a revelation of God's omnipresence. Jacob also notes that if you look at the computer screen, and if you're watching on YouTube, we'll put an image of this up on full screen so you can see it, but it's not only numbers, but it's letters, and the letters are pretty much AEGON, letters that you can use to spell Eagan, the name, of course, and there's also a letter T there. And people note that with all the letters in this show...
I mean, the T stands for thruple.
Well, Wayne Rogers is noting that of these letters, you can spell goat, and that you can spell Eagan out of them. And the numbers almost all appear to be the numbers either 1, 4, 7, or 5. And according to him, if you look at the spiritual meaning of numbers, 7514 signifies a twin flame, a time to embrace change, a call to not fear the falling apart, but rebuild the good in you. That's from Wayne Rogers going numerology on us, Catfish.
I mean, Wayne, he's out there. He's probably living in Albuquerque. He's got a lot of gemstones around him. I mean, he's doing it up right.
When did you realize it was an actual dream? Because we've seen so much freaky stuff on this Orbo already that you're like, is this real or not? How quickly did you realize this was a dream, a lucid dream?
Just now when you told me. When did you realize it, Bubba?
Once again, there's a part of me that this needs to wait till our debate, but part of me thought this is stuff that the Eagans and Lumon want him to see.
All right. Well, I've got one, when we get to the very end, something that I think will feed into your delusions about this show. So I'm excited to get there, but we have to finish before we can, because we're coming up on the best stuff. So Mark and Dylan wake up. Somehow Dylan knows that Irv never got back and that he's not in his tent. Nosy Dylan. They call for Milchick.
The hero. They need help. Who do you call? Milchick, of course.
Okay.
Helena has gone to Woe's Hollow, and Irving appears behind her. And once again, the shot compositions. Irv behind these trees, looking at her in his "I'm sick of this BS" face. Chef's kiss, incredible. And he says the message that is so true. Why was like the show misses Helly? Why? Because Helly was never cruel. Snap,
you're right. It would have been so great if this was Helly
so
instead, and none of this had ever happened.
So good, Catfish. So good.
Oh, but what is great is
so good.
We got Irving and Helly below. We've got Milchick and Mark and our boy up top, Dylan, and they cannot get down to them. So this is Irving. He says Helly was never cruel. She's like, I'm right here. And he says, if you're not her, then who are you? Who would have the power to send their outie to the severed floor?
Boom!
Irving is going to put her in the waterfall. Oh my God. She said she's been an outie the whole time. Turn her back. She's been an outie the whole time. She's an effing mole. She's an Eagan. And he's like, put her in. And then
she says Seth. She gives up the ghost first. She doesn't call him Mr. Milchick. She says Seth. And that makes Irv
damn it, Seth, do it. And then Irving says, yes, do it.
Do it, Seth. Oh, so good, man. Man, incredible.
Holy cow. And so he says, Milchick gets on the walkie-talkie, remove the Glasgow block now.
Okay, so we got to pause here, Catfish, because in season 1, before Dylan, hits the overtime feature and allows the Innies to experience life outside, he scrolls past 9 other system functions. And those 9 other functions are Beehive, Branch Transfer, Clean Slate, Elephant Freeze Frame, Goldfish Lullaby, Open House, and this one, Glasgow. And since season 1, people are wondering, well, what is, we know what overtime does. It pretty much opens the Innies to the world when they're not on the clock, overtime. Glasgow, we find out, must mean when Milchick says remove the Glasgow block now, he's pretty much meaning it's like a block from the Innie being inside. And wow, Catfish, brilliant stuff.
Now, Bubba, this is what I had said to you in a previous episode, is that if Helena had been inside the whole time, and when she gets kicked out, Helly is going to be hella confused, and they would figure it out because she'd be like, I haven't been here. But Bubba, this is way better than that, because now everybody knows. But let me tell you something. Milchick, he's pissed.
Thank you. Finally, somebody stands up for law and order.
Now, I want to know, Bubba, apparently there's two kinds of valediction.
Let's hear it.
Catered and uncatered. Can you tell me the difference between a catered valediction and an uncatered valediction? Because
Irving's not getting either. He's not getting either.
Well, I know, but I just want to know what the difference is, because I didn't realize that valedictions were catered. But he says
catered, specifically catered to you, as opposed to just a generic valediction, right?
So he says there's no penalty but immediate and permanent dismissal. Your outie will be notified forthwith. Yep. Dylan, finally, he's sorry for something. He's finally admits he got something wrong. Irv told him to hang in there. But Milchick, like he has any power anymore, says you're no longer authorized to consort with any severed employee. Turn around. Wow. Irving gets right in Milchick's face. And he says, this is what I keep talking about that's really powerful on this show, and you don't really seem to respond to it. It's not really doing as much for you, I think, as it's doing for me, is that they have different souls, and that when an innie is shut off, it is like a soul dying. So that's what Milchick says. It will be as if you, Irving B., never existed, nor drew a single breath upon this earth. May Kier's mercy follow you into the eternal dark. Irv turns around, and we don't see what happens.
He shouldn't turn around. He has, as Milchick said, he shouldn't consort with any severed employee.
But we don't see what happens to Irv. So this is the thing that I can think might support your cause, is that if the beginning of the next episode, we just saw Irv disappear, then we would know that we weren't in a real space. Well, because theoretically, they're going to frog march Irv back out to the thing. They want to get him away from where they actually are. They don't want him to investigate it and essentially get him back to the office, and then turn him back to outie Irv and say, thank you for your time. Here's your catered valediction.
What does Irving always want to do, Catfish? He wants to find that hallway. He wants to find Bert. Those are two things. He knows Bert's outside. He'll never be an innie again. That's fine. But is Innie Irving's way to not only reveal this traitor, Helena, but also to get to the hallway, to get to the exports hallway?
But how would he get to the exports hallway? He basically
they got to get him out.
Yeah.
They got to kick him out.
Right, but all they have to do is, since Innie Irv is never coming back, basically they could take Innie Irv all the way to his front door and then shut him off and drive away. Because Innie Irv will not, you know what I mean? All of a sudden, where am I? And then boom, they go to outie Irv and he's like, oh, I'm at my front door. And Innie Irv never comes back to share any of that information.
He drove to work. Where's his car how did he get home? He's not going to question, how did I get home?
Listen, I just give him a shot.
What?
I just give him a shot.
Okay.
I give him a shot, or just take him to the elevator, bring him up, or just turn it. It doesn't matter. If you think that outie Irv doesn't know anything and Innie Irv is never coming back, you can do whatever you want with Innie Irv.
Well, that's what Helena did with Mark S.
Bam.
You can do whatever you want with him.
All right, Bubba, let's go to our
10
debates.
out of 10. 10 out of 10.
10.5 out of 10. All right. And this show, I think now you'll agree with me. Before last week or the week before, you're like, oh, we need more Helly on this show. I need to have more Helly on this show.
We need any Helly on the show.
Boring Helly. Helly has Helly has one or two things she wants to do. She doesn't want to be here.
Yep.
And she's going to help Mark, or maybe, I don't know.
She's going to help all of them.
She's going to help. So boring. Big deal. Helena, we don't know. As we said, we don't know what Helena's moves are. Basically, Helena is the biggest person that can tie us to the outie world and the innie world. And so to see all the machinations she does, the way she takes down, and I mean downtown, Mark, is incredible to see her. And again, the fact that we've seen her innie,
yes,
her fake innie, we don't know what she's going for and how that's going to affect what happens on the outside. Her character's motivations, and the things that she's trying to accomplish are far more complex and interesting than
But you don't even
anything
know what they
you
are.
do.
They're interesting because you don't know what her goal is.
Well,
right?
yes, exactly. You don't know what her goal is. And so that makes her an interesting, complex character as opposed to a nice person who just tried to kill themselves a few times and is going to help Mark.
Who loves Mark. Don't get that mistaken. The show wants us to invest in Helly and Mark's relationship. It is tough to invest in Helena and Mark's relationship because we don't know really why Helena's doing it.
That's what makes it more interesting.
Oh, I disagree.
Makes it more interesting that we don't know what she wants.
Real emotion is not less interesting than shadowy corporate overlord abusing a employee. Look, I'm going to show what Helena did to my supervisors.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that into my company's HR. And
the fact that you would say, I don't know if it's because you're just really affected that we're about to have Valentine's Day, but the fact that you say one person loving another is far more interesting than someone having all these machinations and hidden purposes. That love is more interesting than that. I don't know what's happened to you, Bubba.
Speaking of Valentine's Day, would you rather have a Valentine who cares about you, the person you are, and wants to be with you, or who just wants to get effed in a tent?
I believe the question answers itself, Bubba. Not to mention, if I take you at your word,
and the ground is hard. Come on, get a bed.
No. First of all, it's warm because they've got the Lumon heaters and they've got the Lumon sleeping pads, which are very nice and bouncy. Bubba,
Miss Wang is listening as you're getting busy. That's not love.
Listen, was Helly able to get them a night and a tent together? No, Helena cares more because she had to arrange some stuff for them to be able to get busy. As you said,
arrange some stuff. Pretty much, she said, Milchick, put a tent in the woods. I'm going to jump this dude's bones.
Perfectly. Yes. All right. So, okay. So I think we can all agree that you
missed the story of
wrong.
Dieter. I think you missed the story of Dieter.
No, the story of Dieter was clear. If you're going to be in the woods, don't spill your seed in nature. Spill it in Helena.
Oh, terrible. That
edit
is sure to be a terrible edit.
All right, Bubba. Well, I proved myself right. What about let's have the next. Your supposition. You're gonna go to Crazy Town here, so I'm ready for it. Do it.
All right. So, Catfish, since we started this podcast, because you badgered me to do it.
Yes.
You just said, we've got to do it. The fans, our loyal listeners, want to hear a Severance pod. Let's do a Severance pod. And I'm like, dude, if we do a Severance pod, that will make it, because of Wheel of Time and Andor, this will make it a full year that I've had to do at least one podcast a week. Can I have a vacation? And you said, like Lumon, you said no. And then you badgered me, and so we have a podcast. And then...
yeah, what happened
then? You just badgered our audience. You're like, I want to hear all your tinfoil hat crazy theories. Let me hear them all. I
love it.
You are badgering them to do the work. How many tinfoil theory hat have you presented yourself? The person who desperately wanted to do this podcast. Goose egg. You've done as many as marshmallows were eaten. You've provided none.
I provide a forum for our listeners to open up their wings and soar.
The person who watched season 1 only once, that was 3 years ago, has to come up with the crazy theories. But I'm ready, because in season 1, what did Ms. Cobell say? She said, if you want to create the perfect prison, make the prisoners have the assumption that they're free, right? If you want to make the perfect prison, make sure that people assume they're free. Well, who's free? Who's not? Who works on the severed floor, but it's not severed? Miss Cobell herself, she's free. She doesn't have a chip in her brain. But suddenly last week, when she's had enough of Lumon after they betrayed her and fired her, even though she was the one trying to prevent the disaster at the end of season 1 from happening, she has the freedom she can leave. Except she drives out into this white void, and she can't leave. The nearest town is over 200 miles away after she spent the whole night driving and had to sleep in her car. Isn't she a prisoner who thinks she has freedom? Then what also happened in season 1, in that infamous scene where we were looking at all the people, 2 names showed up on the people, besides Mark S. and Dylan G. and Irving B. and everybody. There were a bunch of names in there. 2 of the names that came up, one of the names that came up was Harmony. And what is Harmony but Miss Kobelvig's name on the outside that she gave to Audi Mark? Another name that was in that list was Devon. Devon, what do we know about Devon? She's an Audi, right? She's Mark's sister. And so what is very dangerous about this show about to jump the shark is the show Dark. Dark, a Netflix show, if you watched it, I consider it one of the 10 best shows of all time. Now, I'm going to spoil something that's revealed in the second episode of Dark. If for whatever reason you haven't seen Dark, number 1, you should watch it. But number 2, it's best if you don't hear this spoiler, but this spoiler is only up to the second episode, and there are, dozens of episodes, so it's not like you're going to be, I'm spoiling too much. But Dark, second episode reveals, is about time travel. And it's a big, wait a minute, what? Whoa. And then the show goes and goes and goes and does the best time travel stuff that has ever been done. And right when, the show is at its apex, they introduce the third twist, the third thing to get us to season 3. And I'm not going to say what that is because you may not have seen Netflix Dark. But that third thing, even though it was wonderful and marvelous, and I still consider the show one of the top 10 shows of all time, that third thing was a bit of a mess. So I've already talked about how in season 1, we saw the names Devon and Harmony as in the list of people who had something going on, something where some of those procedures like the overtime could be done to them. We have Kobelvig looking like she can't leave this town. We have in season 2, episode 1, we have Mark running through the endless maze of rooms trying to find his wife, Gemma, trying to find anybody. He goes to the room is empty, and over his shoulder, what do we see? We see somebody in the distance wearing a suit that, although it's blurry because it's in the distance, it could be Mark. Mark could be watching himself in that scene in season 2, episode 1, that blurry figure out in the hallway. I am very worried because season 2 has done what? It's been showing a lot of stuff of doubles. Some people might call it clones. I don't want to go there, but it's showing us doubles. Dylan goes for a job interview. Who interviews him? His double, his clone, his doppelganger. I am very worried that this show, which provides so many wonderful moments like this episode, which is 10 out of 10, is trying to get to that third twist, that third reveal. And I think a lot of shows fail with that third reveal. I think Dark did pretty well, still one of the top 10 shows of all time. But I am very worried that this season, and they showed 9 episodes to critics, they didn't show the 10th episode of season 2 to critics yet. I am really worried with some of these things they're hinting at, that we are going to go to a place which this show can't prepare us for. And so I'm worried that if they go to cloning, or yet, we already have Innie Mark and Audi Mark, but if we have the third, the trilogy for the third season, I'm worried this show will be jumping the shark. And so that for me is my big fear. It's my big worry, is that we're going to have this time displacement. Once again, in season 2, episode 1, they talk, hey, it's been 5 months. I'm worried that the show, which is already brilliant, doesn't need another plate spinning. That is my argument, Catfish.
All right. Well, listen, when someone is crazy, you definitely do not want to argue with them because it'll make them crazier. So this one won't be a debate. I'm just going to let you have your moment and try not to excite you too much.
I have dread. I dread that the show will go too far. That's one of the 4
and
one of the tempers.
Yeah.
Whoa, what are we doing by not allowing Ms. Kobel to leave? Whoa.
Well, listen. I love the rest of that. I'm not gonna contradict you in most of what you said. If the world is real, there is a town around them, and we didn't see her. We didn't see her drive where there was nothing. We didn't see her drive the entire time. It felt like she was trying to get to. I don't necessarily agree with you that like after she drove all night, she didn't drive past or through towns, and that that was the first closest city to where they were.
We're going to see. Listen, I want to frolic. I want to frolic. I don't want to have any dread, woe, or malice about this best show on TV.
All right, so now we're going to go to the double D's, double K's.
Double D's, double K's.
The deeply dumb catfish questions. And we talked about, I really am saving the deeply dumbest for this because we talked about this. So, okay, the deepest, the dumbest, and the only real deeply dumb catfish question. Since Helena was having sex with Mark, and Helena is in her 30s, and Innie Mark is about 1 year old, was she robbing the cradle?
Age is just a number.
I mean, how did Mark even know? How did he even know how? I guess he gets his strength from his really, really badly dyed hair. All right, Bubba, we got some feedback. Let's read the feedback. I need to read this first one because this is my favorite username of all time. It's Areola Grande.
Hey.
Said, Severance, what an absolutely beautiful show.
Skeptical Zach wrote and said, nobody ever talks about the spelling. Helly.
Oh, yeah, that's why Helly's bad. Get mic'd. Love Get Mic'd. He said, I don't think we'll see the GOAT department again now. It satisfied the demand from season 1. But I have a theory most of them are severed homeless people, and the guy was told his Audi loves stargazing because he's sleeping on a pavement somewhere.
Get Mike, come on.
Holy cow. Crazy theory time. Natalie is going to be killed off this season, and Milkshake is going to turn on Lumon. Now, Bubba, I want to go out here. I saw some of this later on. I don't want to jump to it, but I don't know where I saw. Someone thought that Natalie was just an innie.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Well, we did see her talking to Rickon about his book. So she obviously, if she's an innie with Audi hall passes.
Yeah. So Ignacio says some people might have completely or partially abandoned their Audi lives when they realized they're more successful in than out. I don't know how you would realize that if you don't know what you're like in. I guess if someone tells you you're great in there.
Yeah.
But also this would be the same thing where if you decide I'm just going to be my innate, you're essentially killing your self-ego, which is just an Audi.
Well, you get to sleep. You know, the idea you're talking about today, this time in this episode, the innies got to sleep for the first time. If you said, you know what,
right, but the Audi doesn't care about that. In other words, if I consider the innie and the Audi as kind of two separate people. Yeah. They have separate egos. So it's just like if it was you and me and someone said, hey, you know what? Catfish, if you could sacrifice your life to make Bubba's life better, would you do that? And I would say,
thank you for saying
no, but bump off Bubba and I'll consider the opposite. And Ignacio goes on to say the true GOAT of this show so far is Natalie, and you guys are the GOATs of this podcast. Yes, I think he meant to say all podcasts, because obviously we're the only two on this podcast.
Thank goodness gracious.
Carolina says, Helena knows that Audi Mark loves his wife to the point of wanting to forget parts of his life, so I can't see her trying to sway him away from Gemma.
Carolina wrote that before Helena had tent sex.
Oh, man, our boy or girl or whatever, Zombie Italian says, I am also going full tinfoil hat here. Yes, Milkshake's wife is Ragabi. They're working together to bring down Lumon. Milkshake is good at playing everyone, and Cobell suspects this, the reason she wants him out. Agrees with me that Miss Cobell is fully cult brainwashed. I think she killed her mom for Lumon. They needed someone to test the bringing back the dead chip, and she did it for Lumon.
Wow.
She was also involved in purposely making Gemma crash. They need another body. This is why Cobell is so dangerous to Lumon. She knows too much. Oh, here it is. Natalie is the finished product that Gemma could become. She passed, and she's a successful product of MDR's programming.
Natalie is perfect. Thank you for saying that, Zombie Italian. I want to say, Zombie Italian, that you're saying, ooh, what if Ragabi is Milkshake's wife? Well, what I want to say is about Audi Dylan's wife, Gretchen. You know, last week she put on like a security uniform, like either a police or security guard, and went to work the overnight shift. And she said Seth. So she knew Milchick's first name is Seth. I wonder if she's a security guard at Lumon. There you go. Everybody, it's a one company town here. Now,
Whoa.
DV is another great listener. They wrote,
I know why you said that.
I think we're actually more or less in 2024 in the show, so it's not in the time. If Miss Cobell's mother was born in 1944, Cobell would be born, let's say, around 1970, which she'd be in her mid-50s.
Right. Now, listen, the only disagreement that I have there is that I thought that might be her actual real birth name, in which case
it could be.
That was the question. But anyway, Bubba, go on, because DV is simpatico with you, and tell me how.
He mentions that the Stone Roses, which we talked about last week as being in the soundtrack, that song was released in 94. And so say she was born in 70s, she's in her early 20s when that song comes out. And so that music you find when you're in high school, college, in your early 20s is the music you'll play for the rest of your life, DV argues. So it's natural she put that on. At the moment, he continues, not that invested in what happens with the Innies.
What?
Lumon has Dylan in their pocket. I don't think Helly's been in the show. Irving's in mourning. Basically, Mark is on his own, and we probably have watched the final scene of his Innie now that he's gone through reintegration. How well known is Helena? That's a great question, DV. Will Mark recognize Helena in this season? Well, I'm not sure. We've never seen Mark really talk about Lumon too much, and so we certainly have not seen Mark, with Innie Helena ever. So, is she like Tiffany Trump? I'm trying to think who she would be. Like, would she be known to the greater public?
Yeah. Now, Bubba,
yeah,
I want to say this.
Okay.
I don't know where I saw it, but I saw some feedback that someone was thinking of the same exact example as you for the Stone Roses album.
Oh.
And so I don't know where that is, but shout out to that poor listener that somehow has the same thought process that you do.
Oh, it might be Endless Mike, our buddy.
Jacob says, I agree with you, Bubba, on episode 3, 7 out of 10. I know it's for a reason, but the outside world seems off. People seem dumb. Yeah.
Yes, Jacob.
Because they're following Rick. And maybe Lumon is making them dumb so they get people to sever themselves. I got 3 W's for you.
3 W's?
Yeah, I think they're
triple
wise.
W's.
Yeah. Why do newbies like Helly seem to know what things are? Like words, etc., how things work. I think, this is what happens with people who have amnesia or stuff like that. They still remember names of things and stuff like that. It's just their personality's cut off. It said, why does Helly have no belly button? She got a pouch. I think I saw a belly button. Why does Miss Wong eyes messed up? I didn't
notice that about Miss
All right,
Wong.
and final, Jacob says, Team Helena, praise Kier.
Well, he's on you with Team Helena. Catfish.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our final bit of feedback is from
because
Bill Cava.
She goes. Yeah, Bill Cava.
Bill Cava, his new theory is that the show is Tron meets Zelda. And he says Mark is Link. If you haven't played Legend of Zelda, listeners, you may not get this feedback from Bill. But Bill says, every task is like a puzzle. Numbers on a screen, running through the halls, acquiring new tools, whether those tools are the map from PD or the security guard badge, etc. And there are new lands to enter, like Woe's Hollow and Salt Neck, and finally the land of Cold Harbor. Bill says, don't worry, I'll have a new and different theory next week. Bill, thank you, Bill. So
That's
much.
all I asked for is tinfoil theories that make sense, unlike Bubba's tinfoil theory.
Oh, I love it. Next week, guys, we're going to be talking about Season 2, Episode 5, Trojan Horse. Tensions emerge after the team suffers a loss. Mark makes a breakthrough. Catfish, we're going to be at the midway point already next week.
Holy cow. Well, I mean, I guess according to you, we should hold on as long as we can before Kier the Shark gets jumped. But I am very, very excited. I want you to keep that feedback coming to us. You can hit us up Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, on YouTube, Threads, any old thing. You can comment on the episode on Spotify. No one ever does that.
No.
And so you would hit us up at double PHQ. That's the word double, the letters PHQ. And you can hit us up also at hello@doublepmedia.com.
My name's Bubba. You can find me on social media at Fit and Trim, FITTENTRIM, at Fit and Trim on social media.
And I'm Catfish. You can hit me up only on Blue Sky and Instagram at GEETOTHEMAN, G to the man. And we'll talk to you next week on
Milchick Men.
Now with sexy hat.
I can't believe you rated it only 12 out of 10.
That wasn't me.
I know.
I only went to 10.5.
You hated it.